Hey guys, tonight, we wander into the dimly lit, crooked streets of a medieval city before the sun even yawns its first light. You trudge through narrow alleys where lantern smoke curls like lazy ghosts, and you probably won't survive this morning ritual without spilling your share of sour ale down your tunic. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, post your location and local time in the comments so I know where you're tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The first rays peek above the battlements as you roll out of a straw-stuffed pallet in a cramped tenement room shared by half a dozen other women. You push aside a moth-eaten blanket and haul yourself upright muscles, protesting like angry blacksmiths. This is your alarm clock. No gentle chime, just the cold stone against your back and the distant crow of a rooster. In the Middle Ages, brothels were sometimes officially licensed by city authorities, with records dating back to 12th century London specifying fees and regulations. That's your mainstream historical fact. These institutions weren't always unofficial back-alley operations. Some cities taxed and monitored them to maintain order. Still, your morning begins less like a tax audit and more like boot camp. You stretch aching limbs, remembering that fringe tidbit you heard last week about a prostitute in Toulouse who rubbed powdered bezoar stone into her hair for an otherworldly shine. Apparently, snake gallstones were all the rage among certain circles, though nobody can quite explain why. Whether that actually worked or was just an excuse to gouge travelers for more silver is anyone's guess. Historians still argue whether such bizarre beauty rituals were widespread or simply urban legend spun by bored scribes. With the first light dancing on cracked plaster, you duck beneath a tattered curtain to fetch a wooden basin. At your elbow sits a small flask of vinegar water, your preferred wash. Pure water is a luxury you can't afford, and the parish well is guarded by guards who demand coins or unwanted favors. Gargling vinegar kills some bacteria if anecdotal medicinal lore holds true, though some say it merely dries your throat out. You scrub your hands and face mindful of the thin skin beneath your eyes. Soreness there is a badge of past sleepless nights chasing coins. By candlelight, you stow away a length of rough linen, your plain undergarment, before slipping on a shift dyed a muted russet. It's not the brightest hue, but it hints at vitality. Over this, you drape a woolen gown of muted green, its edges trimmed with simple embroidery you earned from doing chores for the local seamstress. Every stitch reminds you how you once dreamed of lighter days back when you were apprenticed as a spinner's helper. Now spinning wool is a luxury replaced by spinning tales for paying patrons. Your reflection in a cracked pewter mirror shows a face flushed with anticipation and exhaustion in equal measure. You slick back your hair with a blend of rendered pig fat and rosemary oil, another health practice passed down by your grandmother, who swore the scent wards off both lice and ill-intentioned suitors. Scholars still argue whether rosemary truly repelled pests, or if it was the simple act of rubbing oil into the scalp that dislodged them. Either way, you breathe deep and steady your nerves, knowing your appearance is your first negotiation tool. Next comes the negotiation of privacy. You pocket a small purse of coins, mostly copper with a few silver deniers tucked beneath heavier bronze pieces. Every coin jingles like distant church bells, reminding you of tithes you'll never pay. Yet today, you whisper a quick prayer too. It's not that sanctuary awaits you in the chapel, but that a moment of silence steadies your pulse. After all, confession in a cold stone church is only a brief respite before you slip back into business. Hunger tugs at your stomach, But breakfast waits for the courtyard below. You grab a scrap of coarse bread and a wooden mug already half filled with watered ale, your equivalent of porridge. In the morning, chill warmed, barley gives you courage for what comes next. Outside, other women gather by the communal hearth, clutching their pots and trading news, a rumor that the bailiff plans a crackdown, or that a nobleman with a limp had visited the brothel last night. You nod at each, offering a quiet joke about how you'd sell your own shadow if the price was right. Laughter ripples through the group, a fragile shield against dread and monotony. In that courtyard, you inhale the smoky aroma of embers and stale ale, letting it fuse with the pulse in your veins. Your mind sharpens as you listen for footsteps. Travelers, merchants, maybe even clergy passing through on pilgrimage. Each stranger holds the promise of a marked coin and an interesting story. But you steel yourself, not every customer is kind, and some will crumble bargains or challenge your boundaries. That's why you practice today's first negotiation, right here in half-formed smiles and subtle glances. Morning passes faster than you expect. Birds flit overhead, scavenging crumbs from the courtyard stones. You flatten your skirt, brush loose threads from your sleeve, and step back into the light. With each breath of dawn air, you remind yourself of the code you follow: kindness where you can, firmness where you must. It's a delicate dance you learned from your mentor, a woman whose reputation was built on both forgiveness and fear. By the time the sun clears the rooftops, you're ready. You move toward the square where clients wait like cattle in line for salt. Your heart hammers with equal parts dread and excitement, an intricate rhythm that has become your daily companion. Remember that crooked grin. It's your shield. That confident tilt of the chin, your armor. Because here on these busy streets, your greatest tool isn't your body or your smile, but the fierce resolve simmering under your skin. You slip into the courtyard's half-light, clutching your crusty bread roll and a mug of thin ale that steams in your palm, its sour aroma mingling with the scent of damp stone. You probably won't find breakfast this gourmet anywhere else. This is your morning ritual. Sustenance and strategy rolled into one. As you settle onto a low wooden bench beside the communal hearth, you spot familiar faces. Mabel from next door, whose laugh sounds like a wheezing goose, and Lisette, who still swears. She once served a knight so enamored, he forgot to pay. In medieval cities, prostitutes often formed quasi-guilds or confraternities to protect each other and share information, sometimes even pooling resources to fund medical care or bribes for corrupt officials. That's your mainstream historical fact. Mabel nudges you with her elbow. Heard the baker's boy has a thing for redheads, she whispers, nodding at a gangly lad delivering flour sacks. You smirk and take a bite of your bread, chewy, bland, and perfect for teasing gossip. Fringe tidbit incoming. You half believe the story that some women dab a pinch of ground mallow seed on their tongues so their saliva foams, convincing clients they're suffering from excess passion, thus justifying a higher fee. Historians still argue whether this was a clever marketing ploy or a dangerous folk remedy that sent more than one woman to her grave. Between mouthfuls, you lean in toward Lisette and trade tidbits. The bailiff's wife joined the charity, means he'll sniff around our doors soon. You exchange knowing glances, measuring what's rumor and what's warrant for hurried coins to loosen purses. Networking over breakfast isn't so different from merchants touting wares at market stalls, flavor of the day, discreet bribery, and court gossip. You probably won't survive long if you don't stay informed, and wit is your best coin. You swallow a gulp of ale, half your body weight in barley must count for something. The flavor is watery, but warms your belly, a spark of courage before the hustle starts. The courtyard hums with activity. laundry women beating linens, apprentices wheeling carts of produce, even a pair of vagabond minstrels tuning lutes. Your eyes dart over every newcomer. Each traveler's cloak might hide a fat purse. You brush a stray breadcrumb from your sleeve and flash your trademark crooked grin at Lisette, who snorts into her mug. 2 jokes down, 1 to go. Suddenly, a brash young merchant strides in his boots, clopping against cobblestones like thunder. You note the embroidery on his jerkin, clearly imported from Flanders, which means he paid a toll to bring it here. You catch Lisette's eye business opportunity in human form. She shrugs and tilts her head, cueing you to make the first move. You stand straightening your gown so the green wool catches the lantern glow just so. Kind of like angling a sail to catch a breeze, only tonight you'll catch coins instead. As you approach, Lisette pitches in a hushed aside. He's rumored to have a weakness for soft voices and sharper curves. Cue joke 3. You lean forward and whisper that you can offer both your voice as smooth as well-aged ale, and curves as reliable as church tithes are unpredictable. He laughs, the sound like coins spilling onto wooden planks, and offers you a seat by the hearth. You slide in beside him, pretending to admire the dancing flames while gauging his coin purse with your peripheral vision. He asks about life here, courtly rumors, political unrest, and the new tax on salt. You tell him that church pewter plates are heavier than royal taxes, and the salt tax is a crushing metaphor for your life. He chuckles, but doesn't catch your barb. Most men don't. You share a mainstream fact to sound knowledgeable. In some cities like Venice, brothel keepers were required to register their workers and pay a licensing fee. Urban authorities understood better than some that regulating vice filled the coffers faster than punishing it. He nods, impressed you know your civic history. Then you slip in that fringe nugget about bezoar powder. It purifies the humors, or so I've heard, and watch his eyes widen. Historians still argue whether medieval medicine ever worked or was just elaborate guesswork with fancy Latin names. He presses more ale into your cup, and you savor the moment when you hold power, not over him, but over the story you're weaving. You laugh softly as he recounts his travels, camel caravans in the Levant saffron markets in Toledo, and the royal court's scandalous intrigue. You interject a witty aside, I've heard nobles use better perfumes than their sermons, which makes him lean closer, his interest piqued. Every word drapes a thread between you, weaving trust that translates into coins by nightfall. Breakfast ends too quickly. You drain your mug and finish your last bite, dipping the stub in gravy someone left behind. You pat your skirt and stand dusting off crumbs as if you're anointed for the next act. You exchange quick nods with Mabel and Lisette. Morning news exchanged, potential leads secured. Networking complete. You tuck your purse close and step toward the tavern entrance, mind already turning over the day's negotiations. The courtyard's shadows stretch as sunlight pries through narrow gaps above city walls. Your heart hums with expectation this day, like every day is a stage, and you, its lead actress. Remember that crooked grin. It's still your secret handshake with opportunity. Now, with belly warmed and alliances made, you're ready for the public square. You slip back through the narrow doorway into your tiny chamber, the morning light stuttering across the rough-hewn beams like shy fireflies. Here, amidst the musty scent of damp straw and moth-eaten blankets, you prepare your canvas, a body that must be both clean enough to entice and well-presented enough to command premium coins. You probably won't master this art without a ritual, so steel yourself for the scrub and dress performance ahead. First, you reach for your basin of vinegar water, the same concoction you used last night when you returned half-frozen and sore from the square. Vinegar, though sour enough to make your lips pucker, has a history of antiseptic use stretching back to Roman times. Archaeological records, show soldiers soaking their wounds in sour wine and vinegar to stave off infection. That's your mainstream historical fact. Medieval health manuals often recommended vinegar baths for everything from bruised limbs to fungal skin infections. You dip a coarse hemp cloth into the basin and begin to wipe your arms, shoulders, and neck in firm, deliberate strokes. The vinegar stings tiny cuts and the grime of yesterday's work, but rinses away more than dirt. It washes off the invisible layer of fatigue and fear. Fringe tidbit. You've heard murmurs that in certain French brothels, women added a pinch of ground snail shells to their washcloths for extra exfoliation. An idea supposedly borrowed from peasant laundry women who used ash and sand, though it often left cuts on soft skin. Historians still argue whether these abrasive powders were widespread or just the stuff of gossip among upper-class patrons. Once scrubbed, you rinse the cloth and prepare for the clothing selection. Each garment in your wardrobe is a calculated choice: too plain, and clients assume desperation; too lavish, and you invite unwanted envy or exploitation by brothel keepers. You lift your shift a loose linen chemise dyed in a muted rose hue and slip it over your head. The fabric clings to your damp skin, making you shiver, but it also reveals just enough of the curve at your waist to signal health and femininity without inviting moral condemnation. Next comes the outer gown. You choose a kirtle of deep sapphire wool, its neckline modest, but the waist laced tightly to accentuate your figure. You tie the laces in neat loops, feeling the supportive tension lift your posture. In better times, such kirtles might have cost a small fortune, woven and sewn by skilled artisans. In your world, you traded a week's earnings for this piece, proof that sometimes you must invest silver to earn more silver. Now you pause to inspect the embroidery along the hem, delicate daisies stitched in ivory thread, courtesy of a grateful patron's daughter who gifted the needlework after a chance meeting in the marketplace. You touch the tiny blossoms, each stitch a reminder that kindness and goodwill can bloom in the most transactional of professions. You consider gifting the girl a small charm. In return, gestures like this strengthen your informal network of allies, from seamstresses to merchants. With garments in place, you examine your reflection in the pewter mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. Your cheeks are still pale from the morning chill, but you coax color into them with a pinch of crushed beetroot mixed into animal fat, a rudimentary blush popular among noble women. Mainstream fact: medieval women of varying classes used beet and red ochre to tint their cheeks, considering a rosy complexion both fashionable and a sign of robust health. You cautiously apply the mixture, dabbing it at your cheekbones with a clean finger. The scent of earth and iron rises, and you smile at the faint rosy glow. Fringe tidbit: you once read in a physician's handbook that too much rouge signified secretive nighttime meetings, leading some town councils to outlaw heavy facial cosmetics, though enforcement was probably more rumor than reality. Historians still argue whether sumptuary laws against cosmetics ever held sway beyond moralistic sermons. Next, you turn to your hair. You undo the linen snood that kept stray strands in check during sleep and let your dark locks tumble forward. You've woven a simple plait at the nape of your neck, less likely to tangle in wind or wriggle free under your coif. You untie a small leather pouch and withdraw a handful of rosemary-scented salve, gently working it through your braid. The oil soothes your scalp and imparts a faint, herbaceous perfume that reminds you of sun-warmed gardens, an unexpected luxury when your daily stage is a smoky courtyard. You twist the braid into a coil at the back of your head and secure it with a polished bone pin carved by a traveling artisan. The pin's delicate filigree catches the light, adding a subtle gleam to your silhouette. A quick glance at the mirror confirms the ensemble hair, tidy and aromatic face, softly blushed gown fitting snugly, but not constricting. You pause to catch your breath, recognizing the power that a well-executed appearance holds in your line of work. You are both artist and canvas composer and instrument, and one final touch remains jewelry. You thread a simple copper torque around your neck and slide on a pair of small brass earrings. The pieces were a birthday gift from a merchant who claimed you reminded him of his long-lost sister. You consider removing them for fear of loss, but decide the gesture is worth the risk. In an afternoon's earnings, you can replace damaged trinkets. More importantly, each gleam of metal against your skin tells a story of connection beyond the brothel's walls, networks of favor and remembrance that shape your daily existence. You gather your skirts and bow slightly to the mirror, a private nod to the woman who will face the world beyond these walls. You pat the pouch at your waist, holding coins, pins, and small vials of remedies, reading them like runes of security and potential. You fasten the leather belt tight, ensuring nothing falls loose when you move through the day's negotiations. As you step away, you smooth the front of your kirtle one last time, channeling the confidence you feel in every fiber you wear. Your body is dressed, yes, but more crucially, your spirit is armored in routine and intention. You lift your chin, allowing the cool morning air to fill your lungs. Today's stage awaits, and you are more than ready to perform every practiced motion. You step into the busy morning square, where the sun has begun to burn off the lingering mist, and your heart thrums with the familiar mix of nerves and anticipation. You probably won't get noticed if you simply stand still in the crowd, so you adopt your practiced posture. One hip cocked, just so shoulders relaxed, and a subtle tilt of the head that says you're approachable but discerning. In many medieval towns, licensed street workers were allotted specific areas and times for solicitation to keep the peace. Municipal records from 14th century Paris even describe designated stew queen zones monitored by constables. You weave between vendors' stalls piled high with salted fish and fragrant herbs, catching snippets of haggling voices as your keen eyes scan for potential clients. A traveling monk shuffles by his robes, dusty and threadbare, but he casts no glance your way. Clerical vows often came with strict prohibitions against carnal indulgence, though fringe rumor claims some monks found their own back-alley comforts. Historians still argue whether ecclesiastical penances truly curtailed clerical misbehavior or merely drove it underground. A burly merchant pauses near your spot, eyeing your russet chemise and the gleam of your copper torque. You pivot on one foot, letting the morning light illuminate your profile, the way a jewel's facets catch a ray. Your soft laughter drifts through the air as you make a passing comment about how fishwives charge more for gossip than for salt cod. He chuckles, then offers a polite bow, slipping a denier into your palm. This dance brief, unspoken essential, is your negotiation without words. You adjust your skirt hem, exposing just enough calf to hint at activity beneath, while your eyes flick toward his purse to gauge weight. Then you nod and move on, allowing him to linger in your wake, curiosity piqued. As you continue your circuit, you pass a group of apprentices hauling barrels of ale, their cheeks ruddy from early labor. One boy, a lanky youth with curious eyes, tugs at his master's sleeve, pointing at you. You catch the moment, lock eyes with him, and offer a knowing wink. Fringe tidbit: some city ordinances forbade women of your profession from making eye contact with minors, a law likely ignored or unenforceable amid the square's chaos. Historians still argue whether such laws were effective or symbolic gestures by fearful magistrates. You probably won't linger long. Crowds shift and ears prick for scandal. Instead, you edge toward a shady alcove beside the market chapel, where cobblestones are smooth and your voice carries low and enticing. You murmur a joke about how preaching porridge is like preaching sermons both too thick to swallow, and he laughs so readily that you know he's ripe for conversation. Within moments, you and your new acquaintance slip through a narrow passage toward the tavern's private chamber upstairs. His coins jingling, he's oblivious to the dark archway looming behind you. You keep up a light banter. Do you prefer red or white wine? Until you reach your destination. Then you pause, offer one last gentle smile, and close the door. Outside the square hums with midday momentum, the ring of a blacksmith's hammer, children scampering after a loose chicken, and merchants shouting the day's final bargains. But behind that heavy wooden door, it's just you and your client. Your world narrowed to whispered requests and the soft flicker of candlelight. You settle onto a low wooden stool in the candlelit chamber, the door clicking shut behind you with a thunk that sounds almost final. You probably won't nail the perfect price without a little finesse, so you lean forward, letting the wavering flame dance across your eyes. Tell me what you seek, you murmur, voice soft as velvet. This is your opening bid, the very moment where performance meets commerce. Your client shifts on the straw-stuffed mattress, cheeks flushed like overripe cherries. He clears his throat, glancing at the half-empty flagon of wine you set on the floor. Something special, he stammers. You raise an eyebrow. Special can mean 1,000 things, from gentle companionship to more adventurous escapades involving butter churns and peasant jokes. You flash a playful grin and stroke your chin theatrically. I offer more than company, you quip, but extra charges apply if you're sensitive to puns. He chuckles awkwardly, and you note the first silver denier appear in his palm. In many medieval cities, brothel keepers set standardized minimum fees to prevent undercutting 14th century Bruges records. Reveal that the city council mandated a base rate equivalent to 2 gros for a single visit. That's your mainstream historical fact. Municipal regulations sometimes regulated even the most intimate transactions to maintain order and revenue. You tuck that tidbit into your mental ledger, letting it bolster your authority. Still, pricing isn't purely transactional, it's an art. You unfurl your parchment price list, the edges curled from candle heat, and trace the faded ink with a slender finger. You point to companionship, sensual conversation, and the dreaded special request, a line blank for negotiations. Fringe tidbit, you secretly admire how some colleagues inked hidden secret menu lines between entries, offering whispered services like moonlit serenade or nobleman's fantasy at triple rate. Though few records survive, and historians still argue whether these clandestine offerings were widespread or merely the stuff of brothel gossip. He swallows, tugging at his collar. You lean back, letting anticipation build like a suspenseful sermon. For basic company, you say, I charge a half gros. He grimaces as if chewing sour grapes. And for special, he asks, voice quivering like a lute string. You tap the parchment, flicking a stray wax seal fragment into his lap. Double that, you purr, with an additional half if you require discretion. That earns the first genuine laugh of the morning, but only after he coughs up the deniers to match. You produce a small scale and a leather-bound pouch of hammered silver coins, placing both on the table. The clinking of metal resonates like distant church bells announcing doom or delight, depending on the day's earnings. You watch his fingers tremble as he counts, then slide the coins toward you. Well done, you wink. Your purse is lighter, but your pleasure's more memorable. Joke number 1. He glances around the chamber, eyes widening at the sight of rose petals scattered across the mattress. You continue the performance I adore, setting the mood just like a good sermon, but with fewer psalms and more palm reading. He smiles, his nerves easing. Joke number 2. Once the coins are exchanged, You rise and circle the mattress like a seasoned predator, sizing up prey, though you're anything but prey when you control the price and the pace. Your silk-trimmed sleeves brush against the wooden doorpost as you whisper, "Choose your setting candlelight only, or shall I add the lavender fumigation?" He snorts. Lavender it is. You nod as if granting a royal favor, though the additional half-grow is already tucked in your belt. Mainstream fact again. Some late medieval brothels employed fumigation with aromatic herbs to mask the odors of bodies and ale. Municipal statutes in Augsburg even mandated periodic airing of chambers to prevent contagion, reflecting early public health measures. Fringe tidbit: a few daring houses used crushed centauri flowers to induce lightheadedness, convincing clients they were ascending to divine rapture, though excessive doses caused hallucinations and hospitalizations. Historians still argue whether Centauri's effects were medicinal or simply comedic at the town doctor's expense. He breathes in the lavender-scented air, eyes closing as if worshipping an invisible altar. You guide him toward the center of the mattress, pressing a finger lightly against his chest. "Remember," you murmur with a teasing tilt, "the first rule of pleasure is curiosity. If you ask for too much, the bill goes up." He laughs softly, and you tap his nose playfully. Joke number 3. You pause, letting the silence hang like a dramatic chord before you yield to the moment. Candlelight flickers across your profile as you guide him through whispered requests, each motion choreographed to maintain both his trust and your personal boundaries. You recall rumors that some courtesans used fumigated glass masks to heighten mystery. You smile, knowing your talent for suggestion works even better than a painted visage. Negotiation extends beyond coins. You've set the stage so that he feels in control, even though you hold all the cards. He compliments your voice like a nightingale in a chapel, and you accept the praise with a modest curtsy, though your chest swells with pride. In this currency of words and deeds, flattery converts as easily into coin as contracts on parchment. As hours slip by, the chamber grows hazy with lavender and whispered laughter. Time becomes elastic moments stretch into eternity, then snap back like a sling. You maintain a gentle rhythm, mindful of your own fatigue. After all, your livelihood depends on being both present and energetic. When he finally surrenders to exhaustion, he collapses upon the mattress chest, rising and falling like a labored tide. You gather your skirts and move to the table, retrieving your scale. He awakens briefly, blinking against the candlelight. You press a finger to his lips. "Rest," you whisper. "Tomorrow's dreams are best left undisturbed." With that, you gather the empty flagon and rose petals, folding them into a scrap of cloth to be burned later, a ritual to purge both scent and sin. Emerging into the corridor, you count the remaining coins, more than you expected. You tuck them into your purse, the jingle a triumphant fanfare in your pocket. Negotiation complete. You probably won't carry this humor into your next client. Each day demands a fresh performance, but for this moment, you've mastered the delicate balance of commerce and charm. Stepping back into the bustle above, you smirk at the late morning sun filtering through the glassless window. You dust off imaginary crumbs and arch your back, ready to move on. Because in this profession, the deal is never truly done until you negotiate your way out the door, and then only until the next client waits in the wings. You sink onto the edge of the wooden bench in the back room, the air thick with the scent of herbs and sweat, and you probably won't leave without a few aches reminding you of the day's labor. Your limbs throb like a distant drum, so you reach for the small mortar and pestle beside you. Inside, a brittle clump of dried comfrey root awaits its transformation into salve, a remedy you trust more than any city apothecary. You crush the pale fibrous root into coarse powder, the grains falling like pale sand into the bowl. Comfrey, known as knitbone, was praised in medieval herbals for speeding the healing of wounds and bruises, and 15th century manuscripts even detail its use in poultices for broken limbs. That's your mainstream historical fact. Herbal compendiums regularly recommended comfrey for everything from scraped knees to deep tissue injuries. Historians still argue whether the plant's allantoin truly promotes tissue regeneration, or if its reputation rested solely on anecdotal success stories. Once powdered, you drizzle in a trickle of warmed lard rendered from yesterday's kitchen scraps and stir until a smooth paste forms. The grease smells faintly of pork rinds, but you mask it with a sniff of lavender oil from a tiny glass vial. Fringe tidbit: you've heard that some bold sisters added crushed snake pepper hemp seeds to their salves to induce mild numbness, supposedly easing pain for stubborn clients who refused to slow down, though a few unfortunate souls woke to tingling limbs that refused to straighten. With gentle circular motions, you massage the paste into your forearms, where veins ripple beneath thin skin. Each rub releases warmth and the faint clatter of bones unspoken, of reminding you of nights spent standing in damp taverns. You pause to let the salve soak in, savoring the momentary relief as it seeps into muscles and bones like a silent lullaby for your body. Your gaze drifts to the shelf lined with glass jars and parchment packets, each labeled in neat Latin script: arnica for bruises, rue for cramps, mugwort for restless dreams. You consider the arnica touted for reducing swelling, though some hedge that it's more effective when applied by a skilled hand than when rattled out of a jar. Historians still argue whether arnica's active compounds were potent enough to warrant the lofty claims scribes bestowed upon them. You lift the arnica jar and scoop a pinch of golden floret petals, letting them tumble into a basin of boiling water. Steam curls upward like a mischievous spirit, and you lean in to inhale deeply. Joke 1. Smells better than a dank prison cell, at least. You chuckle at the memory of the witchfinder's den where remedy often meant torchlight. After steeping, you strain the liquid into a shallow dish and dunk a linen rag into the amber infusion. You wrap it around your calf, feeling the cool moisture soothe the tightness there. In some cities, brothel keepers employed on-site herbalists to prepare such compresses, and municipal records hint at an informal health fund maintained by sisters pooling coins for treatments. That small fact reminds you that your profession, though marginalized, fostered surprising solidarity. As the wetter rag seeps warmth into your skin, you rummage for a stick of willow bark. You snap off a sliver, chewing it thoughtfully. Willow bark, a source of salicin. The precursor to aspirin, was known for its pain-relieving properties. Monks in cloister gardens cultivated willow trees for this very purpose. Mainstream fact: medieval medicine recognized pains of the joints and prescribed willow bark tea accordingly. Fringe tidbit: rumor says some women brewed willow with honey and goat's milk to create a soothing tonic so sweet it could lull even the crankiest tax collector into slumber. You swish the chewed bark around your mouth, tasting a sharp bitterness that flecks your teeth. Joke 2. Not quite honeyed goat's milk, but it'll tide you over until tomorrow's tavern ale. You spit the remnants into the basin and sigh as the pain in your jaw eases. Next to you, Mabel enters with a battered leather satchel, offering a small ceramic jar of eye balm that she claims clears murky vision after long nights of torchlight. You squint at her, asking if she's serious. She grins, unless you fancy seeing ghosts in the mirror. Fringe tidbit: some sisters added a pinch of crushed Kermes dye to eye salves, believing the deep red hue strengthened eyesight, though too much led to crimson tears and frantic questions of demonic possession. Historians still argue whether Kermes compounds offered any real ocular benefit, or if they were courtesy of market hype. You dab a grain of ointment under each eyelid and blink through stinging tears. But soon, your vision sharpens against the gloom. Joke 3. Now I see why clients wear those ridiculous codpieces. World's first attempt at night vision goggles. You laugh at your own quip, feeling the camaraderie lift your spirits. With your body eased, you stand and rinse your hands at a basin near the hearth. The reflection in the iron kettle's dim shine shows a woman both hardened and healed by countless days like this. You wipe your hands on a rough cloth, then dab a few drops of rose water onto your temples for refreshment, a practice borrowed from noblewomen who bathed in flower petals. Mainstream fact rose water was prized for both its fragrance and mild antiseptic qualities, and medieval perfumers distilled it in alembics across Europe. You dab at your temples, inhaling the sweet aroma, and feel your mind clear like sunlight through stained glass. Though your work demands physical resilience, it's your mental sharpness that ultimately protects you, knowing which herbs to choose, which rumors to heed, and which jokes to deploy at just the right moment. You gather your salves and balms into a small satchel, fastening it to your belt alongside medicinal powders and coins. Each item represents a layer of defense against pain, infection, and despair. You fasten the pouch and stand tall, ready to face the afternoon's trials. As you step toward the corridor, you pause to pluck a sprig of lavender from a clay pot, your final token of calm. You inhale deeply, letting the floral scent anchor you before the next client seeks both body and solace. Today's performance demands both physical endurance and emotional precision. With your health practices attended to, you stride into the corridor, each step lighter than before. Remember that whispered joke about codpieces. It lingers at the back of your mind, a reminder that humor, like herbs, can heal in unexpected ways. You step out into the courtyard again, the sun now high overhead, casting sharp shadows across the flagstones. You probably won't linger in the heat for long, so you settle onto a low stone ledge beside a trough of rainwater collected from last night's storm. The scent of warm earth mingles with the faint tang of herbs you tucked into your belt, an olfactory badge of your morning's work. As the church bells toll the midday hour, you unwrap a hunk of coarse rye bread and a small wooden bowl of pottage thickened with peas and leeks. In medieval households, the midday meal, called dinner in many regions, was the day's main repast, often consumed between the 3rd and 6th hours after sunrise, roughly our 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. That's your mainstream historical fact. Even laborers and city workers paused their routines for this substantial stew or bread and broth combination, viewing it as essential to sustain strength for afternoon chores. Historians still argue whether urban poor actually adhered to these mealtime norms, or simply snatched bites whenever opportunity permitted. You tear off a chunk of bread, dipping it into the lukewarm pottage. The broth is thin but savory, flecked with bits of onion and a hint of smoky bacon fat. Fringe tidbit rumor holds that some courtesans carried vials of crushed saffron strands to sprinkle into their midday stew on special occasions, ostensibly to improve digestion, though the spice's cost likely doubled the meal's price. Whether saffron ever truly aided queasy stomachs, or was merely another excuse to flaunt spending power, historians still debate. You take a slow bite, letting the steamy warmth spread through your chest like a gentle lullaby. Joke 1. Not quite ambrosia, but it beats eating yesterday's porridge by moonlight. You glance around the courtyard, laundry women beating cloths on wooden frames, apprentices carting vegetables back to taverns, and stray cats weaving between benches. The scene resembles a stage set for the day's second act, a blend of bustle and tranquility. Behind you, Lisette is perched atop an overturned bucket, her cheeks stained with beetroot blush from this morning's dressing ritual. She waves a wooden spoon in the air, her eyebrow arched like a challenging eyebrow in a comedic play. You murmur a soft joke. Are you practicing to conduct the next parish choir? She snorts spoon clattering against the bucket. Joke 2. You scoop another spoonful of pottage, savoring the modest feast. You probably won't reveal your thirst for luxury here, but you strain to recall details of the morning's rumor mill, the bailiff's upcoming inspection, the new edicts on street vendors, and whispers of a traveling apothecary selling exotic remedies. All of these could affect your afternoon prospects. You dip the crust into the last of the broth, then swipe it clean against the bowl's edge. Nothing wasted here. As you chew, you reflect on how this midday pause offers more than mere calories. It grants a moment's respite for your mind. You observe the sun's path, how it warms the north wall faster than the southern archway, and mentally map the shadows you'll use later to remain unseen or accentuate your silhouette for passing patrons. This blend of sensory awareness and streetcraft keeps you ahead of rivals and safer from unwanted eyes. After swallowing, you lean back and close your eyes for a heartbeat, letting the warmth of the stone seep into your back. Fringe rumors say that in some German cities, courtesans napped in sealed cubicles to preserve their dignity and scent only emerging when summoned. You doubt such luxury applies here, but the idea of a private nap chamber does sound alluring. Historians still argue whether such pigeonhole sleeping quarters ever existed or were simply the stuff of tavern gossip. You tilt your face upward, the sun's rays dappling across your eyelids. A gentle breeze stirs the drying laundry overhead, rustling linens like a whispered lullaby. You probably won't doze off entirely business calls, but that momentary suspension of vigilance soothes you like a lull in a storm. Joke 3. If I could harness this breeze, I'd sell it bottled as countryside calm at thrice the price. You chuckle to yourself, imagining city merchants quaffing bottled wind instead of water. Opening your eyes, you reach into your belt pouch for a swig of cider, an ascetic but familiar tang. Cider was common in regions with abundant orchards and served as a safer alternative to dubious well water. That's your next mainstream fact-fermented beverages offered both hydration and reduced risk of waterborne illness, a crucial consideration in poorly maintained urban wells. Whether cider's mild alcohol content truly kept villagers healthier than their water-sodden neighbors is a matter medieval doctors debated. You sip and let the tart liquid chase away the last of your thirst. The courtyard's shadows have shifted, marking the approach of afternoon tasks, clients in the square tavern bookings, even the occasional magistrate's surprise patrol. You tuck your bread stub and empty bowl into a scrap of cloth to carry back for washing. Never leave evidence behind. You tighten the lace of your gown, feeling the reassuring hug of familiar fabric against your skin. As you stand, you brush crumbs from your lap, mindful of appearances. A visiting noble's retinue might pass through the gate at any moment, and a crumb in the wrong place could spell unwanted assumptions. You steady your breath and step forward, casting a brief glance at the sky to gauge the sun's angle, an old trick for estimating time when no clock stands by. The midday repast has fortified your body and sharpened your senses. Now it's time to transition from rest to negotiation once more. You check the small mirror tucked into your belt. Your reflection nods back in muted approval. You pat the empty cloth bundle and sling it across your shoulder, ready to wash it later, along with other garments using the same vinegar rinse you trust so well. One last look around the courtyard reveals Mabel gathering scraps for her own salve mixture and Lisette dusting off her bucket seat. You exchange a conspiratorial wink, a silent pact that the day's next phase begins now. Together, you head through the arched passage toward the tavern stairs. Footsteps light, despite the weight of expectation pressing at your shoulders. You probably won't find another moment this serene, but that's the nature of your life. Brief oases of calm carved out between storms of commerce and caution. You inhale the mixed aromas of wood smoke and dried herbs, fortifying your spirit as surely as the pottage fortified your body. With midday behind you, the afternoon awaits more negotiations, more performances, and the perpetual dance between survival and sovereignty that defines each day of your chosen path. You slip through the low archway into the brothel's back parlor, where the afternoon light filters through narrow windows draped in faded tapestries. You probably won't find many public spaces as sacred as this one, a haven where you and your trusted sisters gather to share more than just work. Pushing aside a patchwork curtain, you step into a room warmed by a chipped hearth and heavy with the scent of lavender and spilled wine. In this semi-private sanctuary, you settle onto a round, overstuffed cushion beside three other women, Mabel, Lisette, and Aveline, the newest recruit, with a laugh as bright as brass bells. You tuck your skirts beneath you cross-legged and exhale the weight of the square and its endless negotiations. Mainstream historical fact, medieval prostitutes often formed confraternities or informal guilds, especially in Italian city-states, like Florence, pooling resources for legal defense, medical care, and communal feasts. These bonds provided a measure of protection and solidarity in a world that deemed your profession both necessary and shameful. As the fire embers glow, Aveline produces a small wooden box of almond biscuits crumbs, clinging to her fingers like bits of broken dreams. You take one, its sweet flavor, a stark contrast to the day's coarse bread and watered ale. Fringe tidbit. Some circles whispered that sisters exchanged more clandestine items in these gatherings. Locked journals of clients' secrets, coded letters inviting discreet meetings with powerful patrons, or even handfuls of powdered mandrake root to inspire erotic dreams in absent colleagues. Historians still argue whether such shadowy exchanges were widespread or merely the fanciful gossip of tavern poets. You nibble the biscuit and let the sweetness soothe your throat. Joke 1. Nothing like sugar to remind you that life isn't always vinegar and ale. Then you all laugh softly, careful not to disturb the outer corridors. Lisette leans forward, glancing at you with conspiratorial eyes. "Have you heard the rumor about Brother Gerald?" she whispers. "They say he slipped a coin through my window last night, with a note begging a private sermon on earthly sins." You grin and raise an eyebrow. "I'm calling that divine intervention, or a tax dodge." The group snickers. You trace the rim of your empty teacup, recalling your morning in the square and the myriad faces you spoke to. Here, you find reprieve from the transactional, the laughter, the tears, the shared confidence that in this room, you are more than a commodity. You probably won't find camaraderie like this in the confines of a council chamber or a parish hall. Joke 2. Where else can you dump your soul and not get a priest's penance in return? The women chow down the last of the biscuits, wiping crumbs on their gowns. Mabel lifts her chin, revealing a small scratch on her wrist. "This came from a drunkard who didn't appreciate my no rascals games policy," she says with a rueful grin. You produce a scrap of linen and dab at the fresh cut. You'd think some men believe pain is the prelude to pleasure. You dab a dab of comfrey salve into the wound, gently wrapping it. Mainstream fact confraternities often hired midwives or healers among their ranks to tend to injuries, treat infections, and deliver advice on reproductive health services rarely available to unprotected women. Aveline shudders and folds her arms. "I'm grateful for this patchwork family," she murmurs, voice soft as a prayer. Fringe rumor suggests some brothels staged mock weddings or investiture ceremonies for new sisters using rings of pewter and vows sworn on a candle's flame to foster loyalty and create a ritual sense of belonging. Historians still argue whether these ceremonies ever extended beyond symbolic gestures or became part of the house's daily life. You pass the small satchel of rose water around each sister, taking a pinch to dab behind her ears, inhaling the floral scent. The simple act bonds you petals of comfort in a thorny world. Joke 3. If they bottled this aroma, they'd call it sanctuary in a sniff and charge a king's ransom. You all snort at the image of a monarch desperately sniffing rosewater between sermons. Conversation drifts to more pragmatic matters. The bailiff's rumored inspection, the city's new curfew that threatens later bookings, and gossip of a traveling peddler offering miracle cures in exchange for silver. You exchange knowledge like coins, weighing each rumor's worth. One sister mentions that a visiting scribe paid handsomely for whispered tales of noble client stories that would never see ink unless compensation matched confidentiality. You nod, acknowledging that knowledge is power, and power demands payment. As the afternoon wanes, you lean back and rest your shoulders against the cool stone wall. The hearth's heat hums through your bones. Mainstream fact returns in some regions, such as medieval Paris prostitutes, were required to attend monthly meetings with city officials to receive health inspections, an early, if invasive, public health measure. These gatherings often doubled as opportunities to extort additional fees under threat of closure. Historians still debate the effectiveness and fairness of such policies, questioning whether they protected women or simply empowered bureaucrats. You rub the back of your neck, and the women fall silent, each lost in her thoughts. The soft ticking of a wooden clock above the mantel marks the hour. You probably won't find this haven again until the day's end, so you savor each breath here. The warmth, the humor, the solidarity all woven together, like the tapestry on the far wall, depicting a saint's life embroidered by anonymous hands. A cool draft creeps through the cracked window, reminding you it's time. You rise, adjusting your kirtle and tucking stray hairs behind your ears. The sisters follow suit, gathering benches and folding linens to clear the space for the evening's work. You pat Aveline's shoulder, a gesture of welcome, and Lisette offers a quick wink. You all funnel through the low doorway, back into the corridor, stepping lightly, as if leaving a sanctuary. Behind you, the parlor returns to its hush, waiting for your next gathering. You probably won't speak of what transpired here beyond these walls, but its echoes carry you through the challenges ahead. As you re-emerge into the bustle of the yard, the day's tasks resume: clients awaiting rooms, tavern windows glinting with the promise of ale, and the city's heartbeat thrumming beneath your feet. But now, you carry a strengthened spirit, a sisterhood's warmth that shields you through each negotiation, each performance, each survival dance. You pause at the heavy oak door of the city chapel, its iron hinges squeaking like a wounded swan as you push inside. You probably won't find a quieter audience than these carved wooden pews, where the hush hums like a soft blanket across your shoulders. You slip into a rear pew, the cool stone beneath you, contrasting with the warmth still lingering on your cheeks from the back parlor. The incense smoke coils upward, revealing shafts of light dancing on stained glass saints. The congregation murmurs low prayers, lips moving like hidden songbirds. You bow your head in respect, though your heart pounds with a different sort of rhythm, reconciliation of body and spirit, even if the spirit your body carried today demands its own absolution. In many medieval towns, prostitutes were required to attend church services at least twice a month and confess their sins publicly to maintain their license. That's your mainstream historical fact. City ordinances often linked moral regulation to religious observance, binding your profession to the very institution many decried. You probably won't admit it, but the cool hush soothes your nerves more effectively than any herbal remedy. You cross yourself fingers, tracing a practiced sign of the cross. 3 points, a crest of the forehead, chest, and shoulders. You whisper the Lord's Prayer under your breath, voice soft enough that even the sculpted angels carved into the vaulting couldn't catch it. Fringe tidbit: rumor has it that some sisters bribed friendly priests to grant extra indulgences, whispered pardons that never made the official ledger, transforming whispered confessions into clandestine currency. Historians still argue whether these unofficial absolutions ever truly bypassed ecclesiastical bureaucracy or simply enriched crafty clergymen. As the priest intones the creed, you listen for the cadence, letting the Latin wash over you in gentle waves. You feel a slight twinge of guilt tighten your chest, but you remind yourself that confession here serves a purpose. It's both ritual and strategy. By acknowledging your sins, however vaguely defined, you maintain your license and avoid the sheriff's writ. Joke 1. Confession cheaper than a fine, louder than any brothel gossip. You tuck the quip behind your lips, smiling inwardly. When the time comes for individual confession, you rise and approach the grated screen. Your confessor's voice, muffled by the wooden lattice, greets you with peccavi. Have you sinned? You nod, wondering if he expects every detail or if the broad strokes suffice. Fallings in love, nights of passion, moments of mercy, and the occasional refusal to do the butter churn dance. He chuckles softly. Speak plainly, he urges. You recount your transgressions with the brevity of a courier delivering urgent news, missed tithes, whispered jokes at mass indulgence of corporeal desires beyond sanctioned bounds. You leave out the unlicensed moonlit serenade, or the daredevil antics with centauri powder details best kept between heartbeats. Mainstream fact again. Medieval penitentials often categorized sins by severity, assigning penances like fasting, alms, or pilgrimages. For prostitutes, the penance could include wearing a distinguishing badge or veil for a season. He assigns your penance 10 Our Fathers and 5 Hail Marys, plus 2 pennies to the poor box, and a pledge to attend a saint's feast day procession. You'd pay more in a single evening than the clergy demands here, but you croup the pennies into your palm, treating the act as another negotiation in disguise. Fringe tidbit: some women opted to pay a fee in lieu of penance, effectively a sin tax that funded cathedral repairs, though such transactions were often hush-hush, unrecorded by any scribe. Historians still argue whether this practice was a savvy workaround for the pious or a loophole for the mercenary. You step away from the screen, slipping a fresh penny into the poor box engraved with images of begging saints. The clink echoes like a distant promise. As you return to your pew, you notice the parish clerk reciting names of the next batch of penitents. Your own could appear on tomorrow's list if luck fails. You settle back, murmuring a quick joke to yourself. Penance only punishment where the coins go straight to charity. Joke 2. During the sermon, your mind drifts to the wide-eyed faces of parishioners, some offering sympathetic glances, others casting wary looks at your russet kirtle. You recall that wearing dyed garments in such a hue once brought suspicion. Sumptuary laws in certain duchies forbade immodest colors on unwed women, though enforcement focused more on nobles than commoners. Whether guards ever hauled drab-colored courtesans before city judges for color crimes remains a matter scholars debate. You shift in the pew, listening as the priest exhorts forgiveness and mercy. The irony isn't lost on you. A profession deemed immoral is absolved here, even as the city council debates new restrictions. Joke 3. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned again. At least I'm consistent. You smother a giggle behind your hand, grateful the hush dampens any audible stifles. As the final hymn fades, the congregation rises, candles flickering like timid stars. You join in the amens, standing shoulder to shoulder, with merchants' laundresses, and even a few city councilmen who duck their heads to avoid eye contact. You note their reactions, curious, indifferent, or disapproving, and catalog them for future reference, potential allies' threats, or simply background noise. Exiting the chapel, you brush past pillars carved with angels and demons locked in eternal struggle, a mirror of the battle between your dual lives. You inhale the cool air tinted with incense and damp stone, then adjust the straps of your leather satchel containing remedies and coins. The sun outside feels unexpectedly warm after the chapel's chill. You step back onto the bustling street, the chapel door's silence replaced by street hawkers and the clang of smiths. Your confession has granted you a measure of protection, or at least the illusion of it, so you walk with a lighter step. The midday confessional has done its work, both spiritual and practical. You probably won't forget the hush of incense or the whispered absolution that grounds you amid chaos. As the guards pass by, you nod as if greeting neighbors, the distant echo of "Go in peace" still humming in your ears. You tuck a hand into your neckline, smoothing the linen shift as if affirming the chapel's blessing. Ready once more for secular demands, you head toward the east gate where new travelers convene. Each step merges the sacred and profane, reminding you that in your world, survival depends on navigating both. The chapel's mercy lingers like a soft cloak, even as the day's negotiations resume beyond its walls. You slip into the narrow lane behind the tavern, where the scent of spilled ale and damp cobbles clings to your skirts, and you probably won't escape notice if you linger too long without purpose. Tonight's main act requires awareness of the ever-watchful city. Watch those stern constables in iron-studded jerkins who patrol the streets to enforce curfew and moral codes. In many medieval towns, laws against unchaste assembly empowered women like you to be arrested on suspicion alone. Municipal records from 14th century Ghent even show brothel raids timed with market days to prevent immoral distractions. That's your mainstream historical fact. Enforcement was as much about controlling labor and taxation as it was about morality. You press your ear to a shuttered window, listening for the hollow thump of boot heels on worn flagstones. A trio of guards march by, lanterns swinging at their sides, voices low but authoritative. Fringe tidbit rumor has it, some courtesans bribed watch captains with silk handkerchiefs or sweetmeats hidden in candle boxes, securing advance notice of patrols. Though few bribes were recorded in official ledgers, and historians still argue whether such corruption was endemic or exaggerated by disaffected scribes. Joke 1. The only thing more valuable than a silver denier is a guard's discretion. You slip a small copper coin from your purse into a fist-sized leather pouch and tuck it into your sleeve, knowing full well that bribery here is both risk and insurance. You probably won't get caught if the coin never jingles. As the guard's footsteps fade, you step into the open and smooth your gown, mindful of the weight of your coins and the heft of unspoken laws. Ahead, a gaggle of apprentices play skittles with a wooden ball, unaware of your profession's hidden dangers. You sidestep them and duck into an alcove beside the guild hall, where stone gargoyles leer down as silent sentinels. You lean against the cool masonry and unwrap the copper pouch, counting 2 coins before slipping them into a carved slot at the base of a statuesque gargoyle's ledge. This unofficial offering tradition dates back to superstition that such tokens would spare you the watch's wrath, though whether gargoyles guard morals or merely rainwater channels remains a point historians still debate. Fringe rumor calls it feeding the gargoyle, a phrase whispered by those who swore it kept the night watch at bay. Joke 2. If only the gargoyle could guard my heart instead of the street. You tuck the empty pouch back into your belt and muster a confident smile, ready to move on as if nothing happened. Turning the corner, you nearly collide with a lantern-bearing constable. He stops, amber light flickering across his stubbled jaw. "Good evening, mistress," he rumbles. He scans your attire, the modest kirtle, simple shift, and lack of overt jewelry, and nods curtly. You offer a slight curtsy and a soft, "Good evening, sir," hoping your blend of respect and discretion satisfies his scrutiny. In towns like Rouen, constables received bonuses for every brothel worker they escorted to the pillory. Surviving a glance from one often meant paying your way back to safety. You probably won't speak of what passed, so you drift past him, shoulders squared. As you walk, you replay the exchange, no questions asked, no coins exchanged. Sometimes the greatest safety is in appearing expendable. Ahead, the street opens into a wider plaza where merchants have returned to peddle evening wares, spices, dyes, and cheap trinkets. You slip among them, adopting the posture of a simple maiden, out for a stroll, folding your hands in front of you, and keeping your eyes cast just enough to appear respectful. Mainstream fact sumptuary laws in many regions mandated that prostitutes wear a distinguishing badge or hood, often a white headdress or colored scarf, to mark their status. Though the practice varied widely, its intent was to stigmatize and control. You touch the edge of your hood, making sure it lies flat and unobtrusive. Fringe tidbit: some sisters stitched tiny beads into their identifying scarves, tokens only visible up close to discreetly signal colleagues or trusted patrons in a crowd. Historians still argue whether these coded embellishments existed beyond whispered tales in taverns. Joke 3. A secret code even cipher masters would envy. You savor the thought as you wend your way toward the day's next client, every step measured, every gesture calibrated to blend compliance and cunning. As dusk begins to gather, you cross under the arch of the old city gate, its worn stones engraved with the city's crest, a reminder that every footstep here is both entry and intrusion into the public order. You inhale the cool evening air, letting it fill your lungs and steel your nerves. You probably won't face another constable tonight, but you carry the memory of their lantern glow like a warning bell. Ahead lies the tavern's back entrance, where your evening's negotiations will commence under dim oil lamps and polite anonymity. With one last glance at the silent gargoyles overhead, you step forward, ready to navigate the legal tightrope once more. The night is young, the coins are calling, and the city's watchful eyes remain both threat and opportunity in your world. You slip into the dim back room of the brothel's counting house, the fading daylight through the narrow window, catching motes of dust that dance like restless spirits. You probably won't find a more critical performance than the one you deliver here, balancing coins and obligations with the same precision you use to charm patrons. You settle at the sturdy oak table scarred by centuries of accounting and uncap your quill. Ink from crushed oak galls stains your fingertip as you reach for the small leather ledger bound with iron clasps. This worn book is your lifeline, each scratch of the quill tracks, earnings debts, and the delicate flow of silver through your grasp. In many medieval cities, brothel keepers required workers to record transactions in ledgers kept on house premises. 14th century Florence archives even preserve such books, showing income splits and house fees. That's your mainstream historical fact. Systematic record-keeping ensured both taxation and internal accounting, binding your livelihood to the city's financial framework. You dip the quill and draw a neat line: today's total takings, 3 grow and 15 deniers. You pause strokes hovering and recall yesterday's debts: a half grow owed to the linen merchant for your shift's laundry, and 2 deniers lent to Mabel when her purse ran empty. Fringe tidbit rumor says some courtesans moored clandestine IOUs in hollowed-out beams above the bedroom's scraps of parchment, signed in invisible ink, creating an underground credit system among sisters. Historians still argue whether these shadowy documents truly circulated or were simply fanciful tales whispered among candlelit patrons. You probably won't escape the day's expenses without sacrifice, so you cross out the laundry fee and add a line for healing herbs last night. 1 denier. Your quill scratches in a rhythm that mirrors your heartbeat. Deliberate, controlled, necessary. Joke 1. If beans were coins, I'd be richer than the king. You murmur the quip, letting a faint smile tug at your lips before dipping the quill once more. Beside you, the brothel keeper Madame Isolde watches with an expression honed by decades of finance and frustration. She leans forward, her fingers tapping the table like impatient clockwork. Your debts to the apothecary remain unpaid, she reminds you in a low voice. You nod already, factoring in tonight's earnings to settle that score. Mainstream fact again: women of your trade often advanced funds from house owners or local merchants, creating cycles of debt that bound them to particular establishments. Some historians argue this resembled serfdom by another name. You carefully add the apothecary's 2 grow to the ledger under advances and note the due date beside it: 3 market days from now. Your quill tip catches on the paper fiber and you lean over to steady your hand. Debt entries feel like shackles, but they also prove your creditworthiness to those who lend. Fringe rumor: some sisters inflated their debts on purpose to secure larger advances, knowing they could negotiate reduced repayments later when pressed. Historians still debate whether such tactics were widespread or merely clever myths of financial streetcraft. You probably won't find mercy from the local moneylender Brother Clement, who occasionally extends small loans in exchange for prayers said on his behalf. You recall the sash of silver he required last week, paid in 5 installments of copper deniers, and a vow to recite 10 Our Fathers. Joke 2. Between his prayers and my penance, I'm 1 coin shy of sainthood. You let out a soft chuckle, and Madame Isolde raises an eyebrow but says nothing. With the debts tallied, you turn to the right-hand column: savings. Here, you record the modest hoard you're building: a half grow, tucked away for worst-case scenarios, and a denier set aside each day for your eventual escape plan. In some towns, prostitutes pooled savings to purchase independence, renting out rooms, or venturing into other trades once they'd amassed enough capital. That's your next mainstream fact: collective investment and personal savings offered rare avenues for upward mobility, though success was far from guaranteed. You note today's contribution: 2 deniers to your secret stash, hidden beneath a loose flagstone in your chamber. Fringe tidbit: other sisters stashed coins inside hollowed wooden combs or secret pouches sewn into girdles to evade both creditors and unscrupulous house owners. Historians still argue whether these concealment methods actually prevented garnishment or merely added to the daily risk of discovery. You probably won't let the weight of your debts overshadow the faint thrill of planning for freedom, so you slide your finger down to the notes section. Here, you record small observations: the baker's new pricing, which might affect future breakfast negotiations; the shifting salt tax that could drive clientele away; and the rumor of a wealthy merchant seeking exclusive arrangements, his purse rumored to be as heavy as his swagger. These annotations shape your strategy as much as the coin entries themselves. You pause to polish a silver denier against your sleeve, watching the metal catch stray sunlight filtering through the window. Joke 3. Shine enough coins like this, and you'll blind the tax collector. You tuck the coin into your palm and stand stretching your back. The ledger's weight is nothing compared to the burden of choices it represents, but you've learned to carry both. Madame Isolde nods, rising from her seat. She collects the ledger and secures it with a leather thong, her expression unreadable. "Your numbers are clear," she says, "but remember that interest on advances doubles if repayment is late." You offer a curt smile, understanding the unspoken threat delay, and your debts will consume future earnings. You gather your quill inkpot and the ledger, tucking them into a satchel at your side. Each item is both tool and reminder quill for tracking your path, ink for marking progress and setbacks, book for holding your fate in written form. You probably won't ignore those lines of debt if you wish to remain free of Madame's tighter grip. As you step back into the courtyard, the ledger secured behind a curtain in the counting house, you feel the familiar blend of dread and determination. Each coin spent, each denier saved shapes the trajectory of your life more surely than any candlelit confession or rosewater bath. You wipe a stray ink smudge from your fingertip, inhaling the sharp scent of oak gall, ink, and sweat. The dead entries whisper reminders that your choices today echo into tomorrow's negotiations. You tuck your satchel strap over your shoulder, bracing for the evening's clients and the coins they'll offer. Remember that careful tally, each number is a step toward resilience or ruin. Tonight you'll perform as you always do, with poise, wit, and the quiet assurance that every coin you earn, settle, or save is part of your own story. You push open the heavy door of the bustling tavern, and a wave of tobacco smoke, roasting meat, and laughter washes over you. You probably won't find a more vibrant stage than this smoky hall, where merchants hawk ale by the flagon and minstrels pluck lively tunes on lutes. Leaning against a scarred oak beam, you soak in the scene, lanterns swinging overhead, wooden tables strewn with spilt beer and tobacco ashes, and patrons whose eyes gleam with both camaraderie and desperation. Your entrance draws a few discreet glances, nothing more than curiosity from honest laborers and the quick appraisal of potential clients. You adjust your hood, letting the edge frame your face, just enough to suggest mystery without hiding your expression. In some towns, taverns required licensed public women to pay a nightly fee or reserve specified booths to promote order. Records from 13th century Augsburg list such fees alongside ale prices. That's your mainstream historical fact. Municipal authorities often regulated brothel-associated taverns to monitor clientele and collect revenue. You probably won't be thirsty enough for ale just yet, but you order a small draft to blend in. Holding the pewter tankard, you brush a lock of hair from your cheek and scan the crowd. Fringe tidbit: a few brothel-associated taverns reputedly served an aphrodisiac punch made of warmed mead rosehips and crushed mallow seed, believed to heighten desire, though the exact recipe varied by house and no printed records survive. Historians still argue whether these concoctions had any real effect or were simply clever marketing. Joke 1. If this punch works half as well as they claim, it'd make a bishop blush. You rise and weave between tables, offering a soft nod to the barkeep, a whispered compliment to a merchant, and a discreet smile to a scribe scribbling letters by candlelight. Every gesture is calibrated to attract interest, while preserving an air of unattainable grace. You settle at a corner table reserved for unofficial patrons, where a small brass sign marks courtesy of the brothel's house manager. You tuck your skirts around the bench and lay your tankard on the wooden plank, letting the faint clink mingle with the tavern's din. Around you, tables echo with haggling voices, silversmiths debating ingot-quality sailors, swapping ports of call stories, and apprentices boasting of tomorrow's adventures. Behind the counter, the barkeep slides you a refill without question, acknowledging the nightly fee's power. You nod in thanks, letting the frothy brew brush your lips. The ale's bitterness is a familiar comfort, grounding you before the night's negotiations. You probably won't linger on ale alone. Tonight's real work waits in the private chambers above. You drain the tankard and leave a denier on the table enough to cover your sitting fee and earn nods of respect from the tavern crew. As you rise, your eyes catch a nobleman in fine velvet, seated by the hearth, drumming his fingers on a goblet. His embroidered cuff and the sheen of his silver goblet mark him as a paymaster worth courting. You brush dust from your kirtle and approach. He looks up, surprise flickering in his gaze as he takes in your russet chemise and simple hood. You offer a gentle smile, voice low and inviting. "Might I share your fire for a moment?" He nods, gesturing to the empty bench. You sit, placing your tankard at arm's reach. As small talk ignites a jeune wen about his travels, a quip about the tavern's draft, you weave in knowledge to show you're more than ornament. You remark that in many German towns, taverns linked to brothels employed discreet courtesy rooms upstairs, where patrons could conduct private business. That's your next mainstream fact. He nods, clearly intrigued. Joke 2. This one has none, unless counting the moth-eaten tapestries. He laughs, leaning forward to study your features. You let the moment hang, then shift the conversation to curious rumors. A distant plague scare, a rumored tax on women's jewelry, and even whispers of a traveling courtesan troupe. Fringe tidbit, some houses sent pairs of sisters to masquerade as pair-bonded noblewomen, a trick said to command higher fees, though historians still debate whether such theatrical ruses ever ventured beyond hotel broadsides. You probably won't waste time on small talk when your mark is ripe, so you lean in, whispering, "I can accompany you to your chambers, if discretion is your desire." His breath hitches, and coins clink as he produces a small purse from his belt. With agreement settled, you rise and offer your arm, guiding him toward the stairs. The tavern's noisy hearth falls behind you as you ascend. Candlelit portraits and faded drapes line the corridor, a transitional gallery, before the real performance begins. Upstairs, a single door waits. You pause, ensuring no eavesdroppers peer from cracked shutters. Then you push it open and enter the well-starched sheets and perfumed air of the private chamber. The door clicks, sealing you both in a world removed from tavern clamor and city regulations. You probably won't hesitate to command the evening now that you've navigated public performance. You turn to him with a playful glint. Tonight, you set the scene. Poetry, wine, or whispered secrets. He stammers, and you laugh softly, guiding him toward the bedspread strewn with rose petals, an amenity provided by the house for such distinguished guests. Mainstream fact returns: many brothels offered tiered services, common chambers for basic company, and deluxe suites with imported linens, carved beds, and elaborate decor, reflected in surviving inventories from medieval Paris. Fringe tidbit legend claims that a Parisian courtesan once installed a small mechanical bird in her deluxe suite to sing on demand, ensuring her guests thought her voice divine, though no mechanical bird has ever been unearthed. Historians still argue whether such whimsical inventions existed or were romanticized anecdotes. Joke 3. I can't promise a mechanical nightingale, but I guarantee a memorable serenade. He blushes and follows your lead, letting you set the pace. As the night unfolds in whispered requests and gentle laughter, you maintain the balance between giving pleasure and preserving your autonomy. Each gesture, a brush of hair, a soft kiss, a reassuring murmur, is a negotiated act rooted in consent and compensation. You probably won't forget the weight of those coins exchanged in twilight. When the hour is done, you guide him to the door, collecting his cloak and escorting him back toward the stairs. You ensure he pockets no stolen items, professional courtesy, and bid him good night with a graceful curtsy. Descending to the tavern's mezzanine, you retrieve your unpaid fee from the house manager, double your base rate for deluxe suite and discreet service. You tuck the coins into your purse, noting the heavier weight. Exiting into the night air, you inhale the cool breeze lantern light dancing on wet cobbles. You reflect that evenings in taverns and brothels are as much about spectacle as they are about substance. Every gesture choreographed, every laugh rehearsed. You brush your hair free of curls, adjust your hood, and slip into the shadows. You probably won't linger on the street. Tomorrow's sunrise demands you return to dawn's rituals. But tonight, you carry the warmth of gilded sheets and clinking coins in your bones. As you vanish into the city's labyrinth, you hold onto the memory of another successful performance. Each negotiation a testament to your resilience and art. You slip through the shadowed arch beside the tavern lantern held high, so the light dances across slick stones. You probably won't leave tonight without a few eyes watching your back, so you anchor yourself in vigilance as you survey the silent street. The city gate looms ahead, its portcullis lowered, but bolt unfastened, an invitation wrapped in menace. In many medieval towns, prostitutes hired informal night watches composed of retired soldiers or fellow sisters who'd learned self-defense. Municipal ordinances sometimes turned a blind eye, recognizing that such precautions reduced serious crimes. That's your mainstream historical fact. Safety measures were a pragmatic response when official protection proved unreliable. You round the corner and find your lookout, an aging footman named Hugo, leaning against the wall with a stout cudgel in hand. His once proud uniform is now tattered, but his eyes remain sharp as ravens. Fringe tidbit rumor holds that some brothels entrusted night watch duties to veterans of the Crusades, believing their battlefield ferocity deterred thieves and overzealous patrollers, though scholars still argue whether such martial hires were routine or romanticized by later storytellers. Joke 1. Hugo, if you swing that club at every shadow, we'll clear the whole city. He grins, showing a missing tooth, and tucks the cudgel behind his back. You nod, slipping a copper denier into his hand, his agreed nightly fee. Nothing stirring near the key, you murmur. He shrugs. Just the usual rats and stray cats. Guards change watch soon. You release a breath you didn't realize you held. You probably won't sleep easy without this hush guard's promise your back covered in exchange for coin. Together, you proceed toward the brothel's rear entrance, pausing at each dark alcove to ensure no prowlers lie in wait. The dripping eaves echo your footfalls. You run a finger along the worn stones, noting the chipped effigy of a saint, your own silent guardian at the threshold. Inside, the corridor lamp flickers beneath your touch. You drop the lantern's wick low to avoid unnecessary glare, then slide the key into the iron lock. The door swings inward with a soft creak, and you slip inside, bracing the heavy oak. Hugo nods once and retreats, leaving you in the thick hush of candlelit corridors. You probably won't relax until the lock clicks behind him. You cross the short hallway to the sisters' private quarters, where a collection of wooden floorboards rests over hidden bottles of oil and spare garments. Here, the nightly guard neither sees clients nor nocturnal counsel decrees only the safe arrival of each woman in your care. You pat the door frame in silent thanks. Stepping into the common sitting area, you find Lisette nursing a mug of warmed wine and Mabel sharpening a small dagger. Their eyes meet yours, recognition and relief mingling in soft smiles. You place the lantern on a low table, its glow revealing patched tapestries and cushioned benches worn by years of whispered conversations. Mainstream fact returns many brothels maintained anonymous complaint boxes where women could report threats or abuses, sometimes prompting quick but unpublicized intervention by city watch captains. These early grievance procedures aimed to curb violence, though efficacy varied by local leadership. Fringe rumor. Some houses kept secret justice rooms where offenders were taught manners via humiliating tasks like reciting psalms while wearing fool's caps, though no official records corroborate such antics. Historians still debate the line between folklore and function. You shrug off your outer gown and fold it neatly over a bench. Wooden pegs hold your everyday tools, herbal vials, small knives, and your satchel of savings ready for tomorrow's needs. You settle onto a pillow-strewn alcove, knees drawn up, and share a nod with Lisette. Joke 2. Nothing says sweet dreams like a cure-all and a blade under your pillow. She laughs softly, and Mabel clatters a spoon against a bowl to get your attention. Together, you pass around slices of spiced bread and little flasks of caraway-infused wine. The warmth seeps through your limbs, easing the tension of constant vigilance. You probably won't find a comfier circle of comrades. This sisterhood is as much shield as comfort. Mabel breaks the hush. Watch spotted someone loitering by the chapel again. You sip your wine peppery and slightly sour and glance toward the window. In the moonlight, a lone figure stands, coat pulled tight, head bowed. Likely no more than a drunkard, Lisette murmurs, but Hugo'll sort him out. You lean forward. If he tries anything, remind him we're armed with more than words. Mabel nods and pockets her dagger. Mainstream fact resurfaces brothel protocols often included agreed signals, 3 taps on the door, or a curt phrase alerting sisters to danger. This silent code kept the house safe without alarming patrons. Fringe tidbit at one renowned Flemish housewomen used hidden mouth harps to send musical warnings, though no surviving instrument confirms the tale. Historians still argue if these coded tunes were ever part of nightly drills. Joke 3. I'd like to hear that harp be the world's oddest lullaby. You all laugh quietly, the sound muffled by heavy drapes. You take a deep breath, savoring the camaraderie and the knowledge that you're not alone against the night's threats. Tomorrow the sun's glare will replace lantern light, and you'll face new negotiations. But for now, in this cocoon of sisterhood and guarded corridors, you allow yourself a moment's reprieve. You rise and stretch, feeling the wine's warmth fading into determined steel. You tuck your dagger into your bodice and gather your satchel. I'll check the outer door, you announce softly. Lisette nods, and you lift the lantern. As you step into the corridor, the stones echo lightly under your boots. Outside the sisters' door, you test the lock secure. You whisper thanks, then head toward the front rooms to ensure every chamber door is bolted. The hush of the brothel at night contrasts with the vibrant clamor of daytime. This inversion of sound is its own comfort. Finally satisfied, you return to the parlor, where Hugo's footsteps have faded completely. You blow out the lantern wick and let darkness embrace you. You probably won't fall asleep immediately, but you rest easier, knowing every lock is set and every sister has a watchful eye. As you settle onto a cushion, the hush becomes a lullaby. You close your eyes, lantern glow, replaced by the soft pulse of beating hearts around you, each one a testament to your shared resilience against the long night. You slip through the heavy velvet drape separating the common parlor from the back corridors, the muffled clamor of late-night revelers fading behind you. You probably won't find a quieter stage than this shadowed passage, where only the faint glow of moonlight through high windows guides your steps. Tonight's final safety measure demands precision, a last check of every exit lock and silent alarm known only to sisters. You pause before the iron-studded door leading to the service stairwell. Its latch squeaks a betrayer, so you oil it lightly with a dab of tallow from your pouch, silencing the protest. In many medieval brothels, housekeepers maintained careful maintenance logs for doors and hinges to prevent noisy escapes or unwanted intrusions. 15th century records from Bruges detail payments to locksmiths for weekly upkeep. That's your mainstream historical fact. Mundane maintenance was as vital to security as armed guards. From your belt, you draw a slender iron key, one of a matching set, carved with a simple fleur-de-lis. You insert it, turning quietly to lock the stairwell door. Fringe tidbit rumor suggests that certain houses used differently shaped keys, so only specific sisters could operate particular locks, a rudimentary hierarchy of access control. Historians still debate whether these coded keys were practical or simply the fanciful imaginings of house gossip. Joke 1. If only I had a key to untangle all my debts as easily. You slip the key back into its loop and move on. Next, you check the small trapdoor beneath the storage shelves where spare linens are kept. You tap it with your knuckles. A hollow echo confirms it's closed tight. Beneath lies a concealed crawl space leading to the sewers, an emergency exit seldom used reserved for dire situations. Municipal ordinances in some cities required buildings above the sewers to maintain access hatches for fire prevention, though few recognized their value for clandestine escapes. That's another mainstream fact. You lean down, brushing dust from the trapdoor's edges, and ensure the latch clicks firmly. Fringe rumor claims a few daring sisters once used that passage to slip away from city raids, surfacing miles from home in alleyways bordering the river, though no official record documents such dramatic escapes. Historians still argue whether these sewer flights were fact or folklore. Joke 2. I'd prefer a straight path, but I suppose a river dip adds character to one's resume. You stand and brush off your skirts. Finally, you approach the front entrance, a sturdy oak door facing the street. Its lock is chambered at eye level, and you peer through the narrow peephole to ensure the street is clear. You hear a lone stray dog padding by its nails, clicking softly on the cobblestones. You would probably wake every sister if you let that door slam, so you oil its hinges and close it gently, verifying its snap with a practiced push. Mainstream fact entryway audits were common in houses of ill repute, with sisters conducting nightly rounds to prevent startling noises that could draw attention or alarm clients. With the final security sweep complete, you extinguish the small lamp you carried, leaving only the soft, ambient glow from lanterns in distant corridors. The hush envelopes you a testament to order, restored after the day's chaos. Fringe tidbit. Some houses maintained soundproof quilts over doors during peak raids, though no surviving textiles confirm this strange practice. Historians still debate whether these quilts were real or rumor spun to reassure frightened newcomers. Joke 3. My security budget could buy a dozen quilts, or just buy me a lifetime of peace. You let out a light sigh, the tension easing from your shoulders. You probably won't find a quieter moment than this, standing alone in the womb of safety you helped create. Every lock, every latch, every silent oiling was a stroke in the masterpiece of your nightly ritual. You turn and retrace your steps to the sisters' parlor where soft breaths and gentle snores hint at dreams untroubled by the world outside. As you step into the room, the flicker of one remaining candle reveals a circle of sleeping figures. Lisette curled under a woolen cloak, Mabel's rhythmic breathing rising and falling, and Aveline's peaceful face softened by the night's reprieve. You place the lamp on a low table, its glow casting elongated shadows on the tapestry-clad walls. You kneel at the center of the circle, bowing your head in silent gratitude for safety, for sisterhood, and for the life you've crafted against the odds. You probably won't speak this prayer aloud, but in the stillness, your heartbeat echoes like a hymn of resilience. Gently, you sop up the last drops of oil from the lantern and let it gutter out. Darkness smooths the edges of the room, but the bonds you share glow brighter than any flame. With a final tender glance at your sisters, you lie down on a cushion next to them, drawing your skirts around you like a protective shroud. Tonight, you rest on both sides of the door, vigilant in life's daylight and guardian of dreams by moonlight. You emerge into the hush of dawn's afterglow, the city's silhouette etched against the pale sky, and you probably won't find a quieter moment than this. Your final act of the day unfolding beneath the hush of moonlight, still clinging to rooftops. Your limbs ache with the weight of performance and vigilance, yet your spirit hums with the echoes of laughter, negotiation, and sisterhood that carried you through each hour. You pause on the worn threshold of the courtyard, pressing a hand to the cool stone wall, as if grounding yourself in the world you've shaped. The night's final clients have dispersed, their coins spent, and their secrets woven into the tapestry of your memory. You've bartered wit for warmth, courage for comfort, and every gesture you offered was a careful stitch in the fabric of your autonomy. In the city's hush, you allow yourself to reflect on the day's chapters. Dawn's ritual cleansing, midday reprieves with bread and pottage, hearthside confidences with sisters, and candlelit negotiations that tested boundaries and paid debts. Each moment pressed into your muscles like a seal, reminding you of the cost and value of the life you lead. You probably won't forget the feel of rose water on your temples, or the weight of silver in your purse as you climbed the tavern stairs. You recall the whispers in the chapel, the penitent's half-smile in the confessional, and the clink of coins echoing in the counting house. You remember Mabel's scratch and the healing salve you applied, Lisette's conspiratorial wink, and Aveline's bright laugh over almond biscuits. These fragments, sensory, emotional, practical, compose the symphony of your daily survival. Now, as the sky shifts toward dawn, you sink onto the same stone ledge where you once paused for bread and ale, the light of a lone lantern flickering at your side. Above you, sparrows stir on moss-covered eaves, their wings brushing the cool air. You lean your head back, shoulders loosening as you release a breath you didn't realize you held. The courtyard stones, damp from last night's dew, press against your back, reminding you of the day's beginnings. You reflect on the delicate balance you've maintained, presenting desire without surrendering dignity, negotiating pleasure without relinquishing power, and forging bonds in places that spoke only of commerce. You probably won't find many women anywhere whose profession demands such constant calibration of body, mind, and heart. Each day, you transform necessity into craft, turning survival into artistry. Your gaze drifts toward the city gate, where the first hints of sunrise gild the iron portcullis. You think of the guards you bribed, the gargoyles you fed, and the prayers you whispered in the chapel. In each action, you reclaimed a fragment of agency. The city sought to define you by law, by stigma, by the coins in your purse, but you defined yourself by resilience, resourcefulness, and refusal to be confined. You probably won't ever escape the whispers, some praising, many judging. But tonight, as the world sleeps around you, their voices are distant echoes. Here in the quiet, after the storm of daylight, you stand sovereign of your choices. You place a hand over your heart, feeling its steady pulse like the city's beating drum. As the lantern gutter fades, you rise and gather your satchel of remedies, coins, and secrets, the curated arsenal that ensures your tomorrow's survival. You brush off your skirts, straightening the hem, so that your reflection in a puddle of residual moonlight mirrors the woman you've become. Unbowed, unbroken, and unashamed, you walk toward the stair that leads to your chamber. Each step, deliberate, each breath, a testament to the day's trials and triumphs. The iron railing is cold beneath your fingers, grounding you as you ascend. You pause at the top, sliding the heavy door shut behind you with a soft click that seals the world outside. Inside, the hush is deeper, a sanctuary of shadows and soft fabrics. You set your satchel on the polished floorboards and remove your hood, letting your hair tumble free. The mirror's glass is dim, but you catch your own gaze, eyes bright with fatigue, yet gleaming with fierce pride. You brush a stray lock from your cheek and offer yourself a small, wry smile, the final nod of a performer, acknowledging her audience of one. You probably won't sleep at once. The echoes of footsteps and laughter linger around the edges of your mind. But you lie down on the straw-stuffed pallet, drawing a rough woolen blanket around you, like armor against darkness. You close your eyes, recalling the scent of lavender from the back parlor, the warmth of shared wine with sisters, and the satisfying jingle of saved coins. Your breath steadies, and you drift between the world you inhabit and the world of dreams, where nothing demands negotiation and every embrace is safe. You rest with the knowledge that tomorrow will require the same craft courage and camaraderie. But for now, you surrender to the soft pull of sleep. Lower your gaze and feel the steady rise and fall of your chest. The day's bustle has faded, leaving only the gentle rhythm of your breath. Each inhale brings soothing, cool air. Each exhale releases the residue of tension and doubt. Let your mind drift through the stillness, unspooling the tapestry of moments, a shared smile, a whispered joke, the silver weight of autonomy in your palm. Imagine the courtyard stones beneath your back, cool and reassuring. The hush of dawn's first light wraps you in quiet comfort, like a soft cloak woven from your resilience. Recall the laughter of sisters in the parlor, the gentle press of salve against tender skin, the warmth of a clandestine prayer offered beneath vaulted stone ceilings. These memories are lanterns guiding you through any darkness. Allow the final wisps of worry to dissolve sensation by sensation. The wool's gentle scratch against your arms, the lingering scent of rosewater on your temples, the faint echo of your heartbeat echoing within you. You are safe here, cloaked by your own strength and the sisterhood that sustains you. In this calm space, your body knows rest. Muscles once tight with vigilance relax into the softness of the blanket. Your mind, once racing with negotiations and strategies, eases into a peaceful cadence. Each thought of tomorrow's challenges floats away, replaced by the promise of renewal that sleep offers. Breathe deeply one last time, honoring the day you lived, the choices you made, and the quiet power that carries you forward. As your eyelids grow heavy, imagine a horizon painted with the soft hues of dawn, a new canvas awaiting your artistry. Good night and sweet dreams.